popcorn.
You making popcorn?
Uh-huh.
I only eat popcorn at the movies.
Well, I'm getting ready to watch a video.
Really? What?
Oh, just some scary movie.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Welcome to prime time, bitch!
From the Hollywood foothills of North Carolina, greetings, ghouls and goblins, and welcome to the Confirmed Epic Podcast presents Hokey Halloween Horror, the official horror podcast of the epicreview.com and Geeks Worldwide Radio Network. I, of course, am your host, the real Brad Bell. Going to be flying solo tonight. Couldn't get friends to see the movie that we are reviewing this evening, which is going to be Annabelle Creation, set in the Conjuring verse, and it should be a lot of fun. Didn't have any interest from my usual co-host, aka Andrew Stokes, to review this on the Confirmed Epic Podcast, so I figured, hey, I'll review it myself. So what better time to get the Halloween season started than with August? So let's go ahead and open up this very special Hokey Halloween Horror Podcast with our plans for this fall and exactly what Hokey Halloween Horror is. So Hokey Halloween Horror is something that my friend and other co-host Jerry Barbecue 17 Reed started. And it really started as a series of toy reviews on the Epic Review, thepicreview.com, back when Jerry wrote full-time. In fact, he probably wrote the most articles on that website. And he took over the site for the months of, I won't say October, because it was August, September, October, and he had just epic toy review after epic toy review. Of course, they were all horror themed, from cute little decorations that you would get at Hobby Lobby to gruesome NECA level figures of Freddy and Jason and Leatherface and the horror icons, the slasher icons. And last year, Jerry and I kind of had the idea to do something called Slasher September. The plan was to every week review a slasher film. We got so busy. Jerry has a young daughter, beautiful daughter named Allie. He got busy kind of enjoying the Halloween season with her, that we only got to review one film during that month of September, and it was one of my all-time favorite horror films, Dream Warriors, Nightmare on Elm Street 3. So we said this year we're not going to let that happen. We're going to put passion into this. We're going to put planning into this. We're almost going to make the Hokey Halloween Horror Podcast its own thing, although it does fall under the umbrella of the Confirmed Epic Podcast. So you'll hear new transitions, you'll hear new music, you'll see a new logo on your podcast feed, all stuff that we've worked very hard at, and I think the outcome is going to be something that you'll enjoy. So here's the plans for Hokey Halloween Horror if you have not heard previously on the Confirmed Epic Podcast. We have Anthology August. It's going to start out, I believe, this week with Tales of Halloween. And after that, we're going to conclude Anthology August with Stephen King and George Romero's Creep Show, the first Creep Show. So that should be interesting. After Anthology August, we're bringing back Slasher September. I don't know what Jerry's pick's going to be. Mine's going to be, I think, Friday the 13th, Part 4, the final chapter. I'm not dead set on that. But we'll see what Barbecue 17's will be. October is cleverly named Optober, as an option, public option for you, the audience, the listeners of the Confirmed Epic Podcast, or in this case, the Hokey Halloween Horror Podcast, to tell us what you want to watch and what you want us to review. So I'm going to propose a film, aka Andrew Stokes going to propose a film. The mother of Beagles, my lovely wife Abby, is going to propose a film. And of course, Jerry and Andrew, as previously mentioned. And we're going to put it on the Twitter poll. The top 2 vote getters is what we will be featuring on the 2 final episodes of Hokey Halloween Horror in October. So that's a lot to look forward to. We're also going to try to throw in as much current horror content. We're going to preview the horror movies that's coming out here in just a minute this fall. But something like Annabelle Creation, this could have easily been within the Confirmed Epic podcast if that's something that Andrew really wanted to review with me. But if not, if there's horror movies that aka Andrew Stokes and I don't really want to put on the main Confirmed Epic podcast, I'm going to try to get to them, even if it means me doing it solo like I am tonight. I'm going to try to get to them on these bonus episodes under the Hokey Halloween Horror brand. So let's go ahead and get started with a little opening segment on why I love Halloween, and I'll probably throw a little bit of why my wife Abby, the mother of Beagles, also loves Halloween. So why Halloween? Why do we make such a big deal out of it on the Epic Review, on Geeks Worldwide, and on the Confirmed Epic podcast? I mean, we don't do that with Christmas, and I'm a huge fan of that holiday as well. I think there's a lot that goes into it. One, the weather. It's usually very hot and humid in the Hollywood foothills of North Carolina in July and August, although this year it's been kind of mild. But I love that kind of cool, crisp air. That being said, last year on Halloween, I believe it was like 70 degrees, but sadly the day before it was like 40-something degrees. So you just never know what kind of weather you're going to get here. But I think the weather's a big part of it. Pumpkin. Carving pumpkins. Last year I did my very first attempt at an advanced pumpkin carving. I guess it wasn't that advanced. It was a hockey mask, a Jason Voorhees hockey mask pumpkin. But I'm not just talking about carving pumpkins and jack-o'-lanterns and that decoration, but pumpkin flavor. I'm not gonna lie, I may sound like a rich young white girl when I say this, but I love pumpkin spice latte, or the PSLs as the cool kids call them. Absolutely love those. Now they're terrible for you. They're like 800 calories. Speaking of that, Jerry Reed Barbecue has lost a lot of weight here recently. I think he's lost about 20 pounds, looking really good. He's been picking up some boxing and whatnot. But Jerry's biggest weight gain holiday isn't Christmas, isn't Thanksgiving, it's Halloween. I think when we first started, he really first started doing Hokey Halloween post on the epicreview.com and later on at his site, actionfigurebarbecue.com. Check them out. I believe he gained 12 pounds because he would do like candy reviews, milkshake reviews. I mean, any fall or Halloween themed food that a restaurant introduced, he would test it and review it for the site. So yeah, it's the food and the drinks of that season, and I'm not just talking about candy, although I'm a candy fiend. My wife Abby will tell you that, the mother of Beagles, but it's pumpkin flavor everything. Pumpkin flavored beer, whether it's Oktoberfest. My favorite is Pumpkin. I think Southern Tier is the name of the group that distributes that brews that. Now, it's something you probably only want one or two of because it's basically like syrup. They also have one that's a heavy hitter called Warlock as well. And I know breweries all across the country have their own Halloween beers and their own fall beers. So I know that's something. My friend, I want to give a shout out to Danny B of Geeks Worldwide, Danny Benavides. He just started his own podcast, the Beer Mates podcast, the Beer Mates podcast, where they every episode try a new craft beer and just talk about geek stuff. So check those guys out. Costumes, party attempts. I think since we moved into our house about 3 years ago, it's been my goal to have this big costume party and maybe do some type of theme, but for whatever reason that never works out. We got two weddings this October, so it probably won't work out. Abby and I have attempted a lot of couples costumes, never has come to fruition. Now, the plan this year, and we've talked about this isn't confirmed. We both want to be Pennywise. So I guess Abby will be the more freakier Pennywise from this new It movie coming out September 7th. And I'll be that old retro Pennywise from the ABC miniseries. I don't know if this will happen. I think it would be really cool if it did. Of course, beyond that, football season's hitting its full stride. In the month of October, they do the whole breast cancer awareness thing, which is awesome, where they do the pink gloves and stuff like that. But, fall's so much fun, in particular October. And we're hoping with this Hokey Halloween Horror podcast that we're just going to make your fall all that more epic. I wanted to take the next segment to preview the big horror movies that are coming out this fall. Obviously, that kicked off. I know we're still technically probably in what we call in the film community summer blockbuster season, but I kind of think that this transition to fall started this weekend with Annabelle Creation, which we're going to be reviewing as our featured discussion toward the end of the podcast. But looking ahead, there are some other major horror films releasing either on demand or in the actual theater. There's 4 that have really caught my eye. Some of them will be the obvious ones. Maybe I'll be throwing out a movie that you otherwise might not have checked out. But let's go ahead and preview the first movie. We'll go in chronological order here. And that is one of my most anticipated movies of the year. Maybe my wife's, the mother of Beagles, the most anticipated movie of the year. And that comes out September 7th. It's Andre Machete's It.
There you go. She's all ready, Captain.
Thanks, Billy. It's not like any time I've ever been in before. People die or disappear 6 times the national average. And that's just grown-ups. Kids are worse. Way worse. We all float down here.
I saw something. There was this
Clown. Yeah, I saw him too.
Look. It's all connected by the sewers. That's where it lives. What happened? Bill?
If you'll come with me, you'll float too. You'll float too. You'll float too. You'll float too. You'll float too.
So why am I so excited for it? First of all, this movie kind of came out of nowhere, and I don't mean that I hadn't heard about it, when I heard they were adapting it, I didn't get too excited because I'd never read the book. I know that Stephen King adaptations can be hit or miss, something like the Salem's Lot movie, which I have not read Salem's Lot, but I know it was a TV movie adaptation. It wasn't that great. It was crappy. Or you can get something like The Shining, which borrows from the source material but changes the story completely. Obviously, one of the most epic horror films of all time. And then I believe probably in the spring, maybe April or so, maybe late March, we got that first It trailer, the audio that preceded this conversation, and it blew me away. Not only the cinematography, excuse me, but just how freaking frightening and chilling Pennywise looked. I mean, a lot of people my age saw the ABC. It was a mini series, and it freaked them out as a kid. I've never been really freaked out by clowns. I know that's some people, that's their big phobia. Maybe a lot of that comes from me just loving the Joker as a character so much. And don't get me wrong, some of the stuff the Joker does freaks me out, but it has nothing to do with him being a clown. And again, my wife's interest in this film has me. It's something that we can talk about, kind of geeky, that she is actually looking forward to. I mean, she'll go see something like, let's say, she'll probably go see Star Wars The Last Jedi. But I mean, she's not excited for that. She'll just go because I would like her to. I think this is almost the perfect time for an It movie as well, especially the way they structured it. For those of you that don't know, in the It book, it goes back and forth between when they were kids to when they were adults. So Pennywise kind of screwed them up as kids. It starts happening again in this small town that appears in a lot of Stephen King's books. I think it's called Derry, like Derry. And they return and they deal with Pennywise as adults. But instead, even though this movie is going to be over 2.5 hours, I think it's like 2:35, they're not doing back and forth. It's going to be just the kid's story with hopefully a sequel that will focus on the 20 or 30 years later. And another thing that made the timing for this It film so perfect is Stranger Things. There was no TV show other than Game of Thrones last year, and it's hyped coming into the season, the TV season this year, than Stranger Things on Netflix. I think October 27th, season 2 of Stranger Things is hitting Netflix. But this kind of reminds you of Stranger Things without feeling like a ripoff. I know the kid from Stranger Things one of the kids from that great show, that beloved hit show, is going to be in this new It adaptation. But I gotta say, so I saw 2 trailers for this, and I was sold on it. But I didn't want to see any more because I knew it was going to be good. I knew I was going to see it. I'm not one of these guys like a.k.a. Andrew Stokes who is not going to watch any trailers. He still hasn't seen The Last Jedi trailer, which just blows my freaking mind. But at least watch the teaser, Andrew. Come on. But I'm sitting in Annabelle Creation today, and I'd heard this was going to happen in some screenings. I don't think it was every screening. If you've seen Annabelle Creation, hit me up on Twitter or Facebook and let me know at the Real Brad Bell if this played in front of your screening. But Stephen King actually introduced the clip that we see in the trailer of when Pennywise interacts with the young boy and the whole paper boat and stuff. And that scene's freaky in the trailer, but without the music and without the quick cuts, that actual scene scared the hell out of me. And I do not get scared easy when it comes to movies. I mean, stuff like The Exorcist possession stuff, that'll freak me out. But, I mean, I didn't really expect this movie to scare me, but I think it actually might. Everybody in my theater, it wasn't packed, but it was a good bit of people there for the opening weekend of Annabelle Creation, was just kind of a collected like, sigh of relief when that scene was over. And I feel like that's how it's gonna be from start to finish. You're just gonna be clenching your theater armrest and enjoying it and being frightened, but just ready for it to be over because you're so scared. And I don't know if you guys knew, but this is the most viewed trailer in the history of YouTube. I don't know what the exact number is, but it surpassed Star Wars The Force Awakens for the most views of a trailer. Now, this is before a movie comes out, so I mean, I'm sure the Force Awakens trailers have more views than the It trailers now, but they didn't before it came out. So I'm looking forward to it. We're obviously going to review that. Abby said she's going to be on that podcast, my wife, the mother of Beagles, but I don't know if we'll do it as a Hokey Halloween Horror podcast episode or as an actual numbered confirmed epic podcast episode. But looking forward to it, September 7th from Andre Machete. Let's go ahead and move into our next fall horror movie preview. And this is Happy Death Day from director Chris Landon.
Oh, hey, you're up.
Am I in a dorm room?
Yeah, I folded your pants for you.
Great.
Dude, did you get that for what?
Go shorty, it's your birthday.
Stop global warming.
We gon' party like it's your birthday. We gon' sip and party like it's your
You
birthday.
sneaky little biatch. Maybe you should switch to water next time. Super helpful. Don't be late to the party tonight.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Tree, happy birthday.
You can find me in the club, bottle full of bub. Look, mommy, I got the X again and taking drugs. I'm in the habit.
You scared me.
Hey, you're up.
Look, I know this isn't gonna make any sense.
Stop global warming?
I feel like I'm losing my mind.
You sneaky little biatch.
Happy birthday. I've already lived through this day. Somebody's gonna kill me tonight.
Again, that was from Happy Death Day from new director Chris Landon. At least I'm not familiar with his work. For those of you that have not seen this trailer, let me kind of set up the premise for you for Happy Death Day. It's one of those kind of Freaky Friday type. Well, I guess Freaky Friday is like where they switch places, so that wouldn't be it. It's one of those movies where a person relives the same day over and over and over. Groundhog Day, that's what I'm looking for. Bill Murray movie. One of those movies where it just keeps repeating. Like Vantage Point. I don't know if you guys saw that movie with Jack from Lost on it, Matthew Fox. That was a terrible freaking movie. I'm usually not a fan of this premise because it just, I mean, I know it's the point to be repetitive, but it just gets so repetitive. So, Happy Death Day is about this sorority girl who dies on her birthday. So she's got this big party planned, and at the end of the night, she gets killed by a guy in some freaky, like, baby mask. But I don't think this is in any way going to be a slasher film, although there is a potential slasher in this movie. But I don't think that's the point here with Happy Death Day. So when she's killed, she wakes up in that same dorm room with the whole 50 Cent in the club alarm clock to relive the same day over and over and keeps getting killed. But she eventually starts making changes, it appears. She tries to figure out a way to thwart her own death. And other than that, since she knows she's going to die at the end of the night, she's just probably going to wake up the next day. It gives her a chance to kind of do, you know, all kinds of crazy crap. Looks like it's going to be a fun horror movie. Now, let's be honest. It looks cheesy. It looks raunchy. But it looks fun because it's mixing that whole college party type film with horror. I know a lot of movies like Sorority Row and whatnot, and you know, there are a dime a dozen in the late 70s and 80s have done that. Sleepaway Camp, stuff like that. But we hadn't had one of these in a while, so it'll be good to see this with a modern flair, modern twist. Also, what's really cool about this movie is it comes out on Friday, October 13th. That's right. This year, there is a Friday the 13th in October, which is freaking awesome. Now, originally, Paramount had planned to release a Friday the 13th film that day, but That was a nightmare in and of itself, trying to make that movie. They went from a found footage Jason movie to rewriting it 2 times. I don't even know what the current state of Jason Voorhees is at Paramount now. But this year on Friday the 13th, we got Happy Death Day. It's a movie that I would like to review on the podcast within the Hokey Halloween Horror brand and label, if you will. Again, check it out, Friday, October 13th. Next up on our horror movie preview for fall 2017 is DirecTV. That's right, you heard it right. DirecTV's Leatherface, out September 21st.
You trying to make us crash?
You want me to stop?
What is it?
I don't know.
Okay, now, make a wish. You ready for your present?
Leatherface hits DirecTV exclusively on September 21st before moving to all streaming platforms on October 20th. I gotta be honest here, guys. If this wasn't Leatherface, one of the most iconic slasher and horror characters of all time, I probably wouldn't even have brought this up. I mean, it looks like a TV movie. That doesn't mean that a TV movie, especially a hokey horror movie at Halloween, can't be fun, but it doesn't look like it's going to be a good movie. I guess I don't really understand the desire, the want to, the need for another Leatherface movie, specifically a prequel. I would have gone for a sequel. I'm a big fan. I know this may be blasphemy, but I'm a bigger fan of I think it's 2004 remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre with Jessica Biel than I am the original. It's 1974, I believe, maybe 76. I don't know off the top of my head. Original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I own both. I like both. But this is one of the only cases in movie history probably where I like the remake better than the original. Well, I don't know if listeners knew this, but they actually made a prequel to that Jessica Biel Leatherface movie. I think it was called Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning. What an original and riveting title, right? But I actually saw that in the theater when that came out. I think it was that's between 06 and 07, right somewhere around there. It may have been fall 07. And that was a really good movie. Now, I have not seen it since I saw it in the theater, but the finale of that movie, the final kill shot involving Leatherface, is one of my favorite kills in all the slasher subgenre of horror, and that's saying a lot because there's a lot of kills within that subgenre. But I think that, this movie coming out exclusively on DirecTV, they're a pain in the ass. I know that because you've heard my DirecTV horror stories on the podcast before. A lot of people have been dropping them and cutting the cord anyway. I don't know how many people who may want to see this, who have Netflix, Hulu, the Amazon Prime streaming, are going to have to wait to October 20th, which, hey, that's still perfect time to watch it right for Halloween. But I hope that interest is still there. I think the buzz may be lost by the time people get to watch it on October 20th, or maybe they just forget about it and don't get to watch it on October 20th because it slips their mind before they know it. It's election day and they're like, I'll catch it next year, and they never catch it. But upon watching this trailer, there's been 2. There was a red band one, and then there was a second one. I think it was green band, but it was a completely different trailer, which was weird. But again, we're talking about a TV movie. It just looked generic. That's the best way I could describe it. Like, it does look kind of cheap. So I'll probably watch it just because I have DirecTV. But if I didn't, there's no way I would probably seek it out. The final movie I'm going to preview for fall 2017 horror-wise is Jigsaw, which is coming out October 27th.
Now the game's simple. Best ones are. You want mercy? Play by the rules.
Jigsaw's out October 27th. It is directed by the Spierig brothers, who I'm not too familiar with. It's going to feature the return, I don't know how, but it's going to feature the return of Tobin Bell as Jigsaw. Now, a lot of people wonder why I'm so excited for this movie, and I'm genuinely excited for Jigsaw and the return of the Saw franchise. A lot of that has to do with my fond memories and personal love for this franchise. I kind of consider this, I know my colleague A.K. Andrew Stokes would say his, and Jerry Barbecue 17 Reed would say theirs are the Paranormal Activity films. But I kind of consider Saw the horror franchise of my generation. If you're, we're in the 70s, you had Halloween, which was the best, let's face it. If you're in the 80s, you had the Friday the 13th and the Nightmare on Elm Streets. Well, if you're my age, which I'm 30, and within, late 20s, early 30s, then the Saw movies were a big freaking deal. That first one came out of nowhere. I remember watching it on DVD several times, borrowed it from a friend, went out and bought it on DVD, and it was kind of unlike anything within the horror genre that we had seen, and it created this whole torture subgenre within that and Hostel. I hate Hostel, not getting into that. I know some people love Eli Roth, but not getting into Hostel here. And of course, James Wan, who is now going to direct Aquaman, has directed some of the best Fast and the Furious movies. He was the director of the original Saw. But I remember kind of the buzz, the word of mouth with that first Saw, and then just that excitement for that second one, which I believe came out a year later. I'll never forget being in a packed theater for that opening scene of that second Saw movie. I've talked about this before on the Confirmed Epic podcast, in which you had the key sewn behind the eye of a lady, and the key was for the contraption that was basically going to rip her jaws apart. Horror fans will remember that scene, and just the result of it, and it just the holy crap, just as a collective group coming out of that theater. So, and I think the Saw movies as a trilogy are really good. I think there's 7 of them. So as they went on, they got pretty bad, starting with the 4th one. Actually, the last one, I believe it was the 7th one, revolved around, it was almost a commentary on the health insurance industry at the time, and it was really good. I guess it wasn't too good because I can't remember the exact number it was, but that kind of gets me to the reason of why I really like this franchise is, in a very sick and twisted way, these are deep films. They have some type of life lesson to them. Whether it's about discrimination, whether it's about, an anti-adultery, whether it's about just pushing you away from wasting your life. I mean, there's a lot of, they're sick and twisted and they're out there, but a lot of lessons that come out of these Saw movies. And I'm really interested, to borrow a phrase from A.K. Andrew Stokes, to see what this is going to look like updated. I think this is going to be a boom or bust movie. It's going to be like, holy shit, the Saw franchise is back in full force. I can't wait for another one, which I'm sure if it does well, there'll be another one in time for next Halloween. Or to be like, they should have just left that alone and left that in the 2000s and let it been its own thing and not have brought that back. That being said, this isn't like a remake or a reboot. It does look like a continuation within the Sawverse that we all know and love. Maybe we all don't love, but we all at least know. So I'm looking forward to Jigsaw. That one's right at Halloween, as all the Saw movies had previously been, out October 27th. So guys, let's go ahead and get into our featured review of this podcast, which is Annabelle Creation.
This is our new orphanage. It's as big as a castle.
Feel free to use the house as you see fit. Mrs. Mullins and I stay down here. Your rooms are upstairs. Locked, and it stays that way.
Hello? You're the Mullins daughter, aren't you?
You help me?
What do you need?
That was from the trailer of Annabelle Creation, which was directed by David F. Sandburg. Before we get started into our review, let's go ahead and get into some stats on the film. Nerd! As I mentioned earlier, it was directed by David F. Sandburg. It was released August 11, 2017. Music in Annabelle Creation comes by the way of Benoit Fish. It is a Warner Brothers New Line production. Those of you that don't know, New Line was a big production company in the late 80s, early 90s, but WB Warner Brothers bought them out, and they release a lot of their horror films under the New Line umbrella there. 109 minutes, the running time, although it felt a bit longer. We'll get into that here in a second. This movie was not that big of a budget considering it was part of a broader film universe. It's $15 million budget. It made all that back, $15 million this opening Friday alone. It's made $17.7 million internationally for a grand total of $32.7 million to date. So with a $15 million budget, Warner's has definitely made their money back. Now, a lot of film reviewers and people within the podcasting community saw this movie at San Diego Comic-Con in 2017, a couple weeks ago, and there was a lot of positive buzz, a lot of positive reviews coming out of places like SlashFilm.com, a writer over there by the name of Ethan Anderton, who's a great reviewer, actually gave this 8 out of 10. So that's very high praise coming from Ethan. 68% though on Rotten Tomatoes is where we stand right now. So let's go ahead and get into just kind of my thoughts on the Conjuring verse as a whole, and it has become a universe. It's crazy. Universal wants this Universal Monsters cinematic universe so bad, and it flopped out of the gate with Tom Cruise and The Mummy. But quietly, WB has their own with the Conjuring movies, because and they've all been financial successes. Conjuring 1, Conjuring 2, Annabelle Creation. They're working on The Crooked Man, who was a horrifying character from The Conjuring 2. The Conjuring, the original, is one of my favorite movies of the past probably 10 years. That being said, I notoriously gave it a grade and a half, even though it's a movie whose praises I sing at least on a yearly basis. And going back to our discussion on The Conjuring, it was so well done, perfectly paced, perfectly shot. I mean, it was like eating, this is Jerry's Barbecue 17's analogy, it's like eating a really good pizza, a supreme pizza with all the ingredients, but at the end of the day, it's just pizza. It's nothing you've never had before. And that's kind of how I feel about the Conjuring movies is, if they would have been out before The Exorcist, they would have been The Exorcist. But they just take those possession horror tropes and they do them to perfection. That being said, they don't break any ground. So I love those two movies. Ed and Lorraine Warren. You have the Vera Farmiga playing Lorraine Warren, and my boy that played Night Owl, blanking on his name right now. Maybe the people in the chat can help me out. But very underrated actor. I think I'm going to look that up real quick. Patrick Wilson, who is phenomenal as Ed Lorraine in those movies. Of course, loosely based on true stories, on true events. Again, loosely. There's some Mythbusters and stuff who have kind of came out and tried to denounce a lot of the things that the Ed and Ed and Lorraine Warren have done, but you can read about that if you want to. Now, Annabelle, the movie, the one that came out a couple years ago, saw that with my wife Abby, aka the mother of Beagles, and it scared the hell out of us. I mean, I really enjoyed that movie, and upon leaving it, I thought more people would, but it's kind of panned. I mean, people don't seem to have I remember in the moment people liking the movie, but that movie, I guess, did not age well despite not being that old. Now, the Annabelle doll from that opening scene of the original Conjuring remains iconic, even if her solo film was not. But I really enjoyed that first Annabelle film. I'd probably give it a great. I mean, I have not seen it since it came out about I think it was two Halloweens ago, I believe, is when it came out. That was Halloween 2015. But I don't own it. I do own the Conjuring movies, if that says anything. Now, Annabelle Creation is a prequel to the Annabelle film, which Annabelle was a prequel to the Conjuring in a way. So this is a prequel of a prequel, which sounds kind of weird, and we'll see if that worked or not. So I just want to get into my initial impressions on Annabelle Creation. I thought it would be a lot better. I really did. I know it had 68% on RT, but just based on reading reviews and listening to some podcasts to people I know, I love, and respect, the film had pretty good word of mouth. People seemed to be genuinely frightened by it. There was probably not one jump scare in this movie or anything. There was one part in this movie that freaked me out a little bit, but I'll get into that when we talk about the spoilers for Annabelle Creation. I will say one thing you'll notice about this movie is the cinematography is phenomenal. I mean, it is. You would think Roger Deakins shot this movie, who is notoriously the greatest cinematographer of all time, who does not have an Academy Award for cinematography, which is just crazy to me. However, this film, which is shot by Max Alexandre, who I've never heard of. This is his first big movie, at least based on my research. It looks so great. The house that is the mainstay for Annabelle Creation is kind of out in the middle of nowhere, but it's really on a beautiful landscape for a place that a horror movie will take place in. And they really do a good job with costume design of making this movie, in particular with kind of the early years of this movie. Feel like a period piece of the late 1940s, and I think we've eventually flashed to the early 1950s before ending in the 1960s. So you spend most of your time, I believe it would be considered probably the early 1950s. That's your bulk of the film. Now, I found the characters here to be a little boring. Let me go ahead and just set up Annabelle Creation. So it starts out with a couple who are very close with their child. The child tragically passes away. I'm not going to say, before spoilers how that happens, but the child's name, who is Annabelle, passes away. And then we flash forward to that same family kind of wanting kids in the house again, despite the mother being very sick. And they open up their beautiful home, huge home. I mean, I don't know if I'd classify it as a mansion, but it's a really big house, to these orphans to come in and have a place to stay that feels like a home and not an orphanage. And that's where you have the main story of Annabelle Creation unfold. The primary family is a bit dull. I mean, they seem generic and in a dated way, which I think that's how they were supposed to feel. So they were supposed to be somewhat of a boring old couple. But the girls that come in that vary probably between ages 12 and probably 18, 19, even probably one of the girls looks probably to be about 20 years old, which I don't know why she'd be in an orphanage past 18, but I don't know how orphanages work. Thank God I never was in one. But they're all just, the characters behave, and I'm not even talking about for plot reasons. they don't behave like real people at all. At all. I'm not saying that I should know how orphans act. It's just the way they act, nobody would act. Let me give you an example about this. Well, maybe I don't even have to give you an example, but just showing you, telling you about this, how the writers who wrote this film, and I'll have to double check on who actually, it was Gary Doberman who wrote Annabelle Creation. These are such one-dimensional characters. I mean, these girls mainly laugh, giggle, if you will, and talk about boys and point at clothes and magazines. If you want to talk about shallow female characters, Annabelle Creation is comprised of them. That being said, our main character is a female who is Linda, played by Lulu Wilson. She was somewhat interesting. She acted as the conduit for Annabelle. We can get more to that as spoilers, but this is just chock full of one-dimensional characters, in particular one-dimensional female characters who don't even behave in any genuine way whatsoever. This is a very slow movie. I mean, it's clocking in at 109 minutes, but 30 minutes in, I looked at my phone and I had not really been entertained at all. I was entertained eventually, but it takes so long, to set up something that I don't know if the payoff is ultimately worth it. I don't know if I'd recommend you see this in theaters unless you're just a huge fan of the Conjuring movies, of the Conjuring verse. If you're a huge fan of the first Annabelle, you enjoyed all those movies like I did, go see this movie. But if you're just looking for a new good horror movie to enjoy this Halloween season at the theater, I'm not going to recommend Annabelle Creation. Now, you'll have to stay tuned to the end of the review to see what I'll review it on the confirmed Epic rating scale. But let's go ahead and roll the reel forward to spoilers for Annabelle Creation starting now. So this movie plays out the family that takes in the girls from the orphanage who need a home. They made a deal with the devil. Basically, they sold their souls to get their little girl back. But what they get is not their little girl, who they call B, whose real name is Annabelle. Instead, they get a demon posing as Annabelle, their daughter, that eventually works its way into the doll and uses the doll as a conduit to get to this side of the spiritual realm, if you will. Let's talk about how B died. I alluded to her dying before the spoiler reel, but I mean, really tragic stuff. I mean, this is a really good, wholesome family. That they go to church. On their way back, they get a flat tire. Dad's changing the tire. One of the lug nuts kind of goes into the road, and B goes for it and tragically gets hit and killed. We flash forward to 12 years later when the orphan girls are coming in. So that's kind of the story of how demons begin to prey on this family. Speaking of the demon here that you see, I mean, was he scary? Yeah, anytime you see a demon on screen, I mean, it's going to freak you out just because that's some scary shit. But he kind of looked like Nightcrawler from X-Men. Like X-Men 2 with bigger horns, and I didn't really find that all that intimidating. Now, if he was standing in this room right now, I'd be scared shitless. But that being said, sitting in the movie theater on a Saturday afternoon and toward the end of summer didn't scare me too much. However, there is a moment in this film in which the demon that had possessed Annabelle takes control of this scarecrow. And that is a really freaky part, because he traps one of the young ladies in a barn, and there's multiple lights in a row in this barn. And if you hear some whimpering in the background, Penny, my beagle's freaking out because it's storming here. So that's the reason for that. And one by one, this demon begins to unscrew these lights, and then the scarecrow attacks. And let me tell you, it's a lot freakier than the Scarecrow in any of the Nolan Batman movies. And that's not the part that I was alluding to earlier that really freaked me out. There is some unsettling stuff because eventually there's a girl who is our main character, and she actually is the best character of the film. She has more than one dimension to her. She had polio and lost the use of one side of her leg, but so she has to walk with a cane now. She can't walk upstairs. The owner of the house has built like one of those moving chair contraptions because there's not an elevator in this old house. The people seem fairly wealthy, considering the dad was a toy maker who designed dolls. But hey, it was the late 40s, early 50s, and who knows? I guess that was a hot industry during that time. So it's really sad to see her get possessed, this cripple girl. I mean, you know, I'm not a member of the Catholic Church. I mean, I listen to horror podcasts. I've seen a ton of exorcism movies, but it's a trope of demon possession movies for them to prey on the weakest member of a group, maybe the youngest, somebody who's sick. In this case, she was as a result of polio, was kind of the outcast of the group because she couldn't go and participate in a lot of the things the other girls were able to enjoy. When you see Annabelle transfer her possession to the young crippled girl, it's freaking gross. It's like tar vomit from one mouth to another. But that is when the movie picks up steam a little bit. There are some always interesting cross-bearing scenes within the Conjuring verse. I believe it's the second Conjuring. I may be wrong. Where this demon has possessed the second. It possessed that apartment in England. So they've lined this room with crosses. And Patrick Wilson, Ed, I guess kind of spoilers for Conjuring 2 a little bit here. Patrick Wilson, who plays Ed Warren here, goes into the room, tries to begin quoting scripture to cast the demon out, and all the crosses turn upside down. Okay, that was like at one time. That's in the Conjuring 2 trailer. One of the things, they didn't really have to sell me on that film, but it really sold me on that film last summer. I think the cross scene here is much more disturbing. It's probably the most intense scene involving a cross in an exorcism movie I've ever seen. So the main gentleman realizes that the crippled girl, the original father of Annabelle, realized that the crippled girl's possessed. So he tries to trap her in a room covered in scripture that he's taped up from the Bible. And she's in the dining room. He begins bringing the cross toward her. The demon freezes him, stops him, and she begins to break his fingers one at a time until the cross is dropped and she can kill the man. And to see, like, it didn't look cheap, it didn't look cheesy when these fingers were breaking. I mean, it looked authentic and real, and it was a really unsettling scene, and probably what I thought was the most well done scene of the entire movie. The ending is kind of, the beginning slow but well done. The middle of the movie is where it thrives, showing the demon moving from Annabelle to the young crippled girl and the repercussions of that. The ending is really sloppy. They do a flash forward to this girl getting adopted, then a flash forward to her growing up and her killing her family, which brings you to the start of the first Annabelle movie, which I think it's a far superior film than this movie. But I think I'm in the minority with that opinion. I would love to hear what you guys thought about Annabelle Creation. Hit me up on Twitter at the Real Brad Bell, DREEL Brad Bell. I'm gonna just go ahead and give my rating for Annabelle Creation here. I really waffled. I sound like AK Andrew Stokes here between two ratings. Usually I'm pretty sure about what I'm going to rate something up on walking out of the theater. I usually try to go with my gut. Sometimes that bites me in the ass because I go back and watch a movie and I'm like, why did I give Amazing Spider-Man 2 4 stars or a great on our rating scale? Like, what was I thinking? However, I'm going to confirm Annabelle Creation at an 8.5, which, considering my love for the Conjuring verse and the good word of mouth from reviewers that I love and respect, I was expecting a lot more. On the last episode, number 72, we reviewed Detroit of the Confirmed Epic podcast. I posed a question to A.K. Andrew Stokes. Or maybe I was just talking to Andrew on the phone. Sometimes all this stuff runs together. But I posed the question of, when's the last time you've really seen a bad movie? And he said, of course, Transformers The Last Night. But, I mean, you knew that was going to be bad. I think it was fun bad, but that's my opinion. But the last time, it's been, I can't even think off the top of my head of when I was disappointed from a film, when I expected it to be good and it let me down. But this is the first time in a long time, so at least theatrically, the horror summer to fall movie season is not off to a bang. I'm going to confirm Annabelle Creation at an 8.5. That being said, I'm looking extremely forward to if they ever do Conjuring 3, which James Wan said he's going to do it, and Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga are on board if he does it. There's a book that you can read, the actual tales of the real life Ed and Lorraine Warren, but one of the stories they have involves werewolves. I know, but if James Wan he's talking about doing that story, if he does, I'm in. James Wan also directed the first Saw. For those of you that don't know, he's working on Aquaman right now, so I'm hoping after the Jason Momoa Aquaman, James Wan will come to finish the Conjuring trilogy. I'm going to go see The Crooked Man. That'll probably be the next film in this universe we get. Kind of sounds Babadookish, but I mean, this isn't going to curtail me from going to seeing these other movies, but if you're a big fan of these movies, go see it. The Conjuring verse, if not, stay away probably. I mean, I would catch it on VOD. I'd Redbox it. I wouldn't completely skip it, but I'm going to confirm Annabelle Creation at an 8.5. So I think that's just about going to do it for this very special edition of the Confirmed Epic Podcast presents Hokey Halloween Horror 2017. You can find us on Instagram at Confirmed Epic Podcast. Post epic geek imagery there every day. Actually broadcasting this podcast live on Facebook. If you're a fan of the show, you can add me on Facebook at Real Brad, REEL Brad. Of course, my mainstay is Twitter, the Real Brad Bell, the REEL Brad Bell. Hit me up on there anytime, day or night, and I will get back to you. If you have not checked out the Stardust app, do yourself a favor. We talked about it on last podcast. It's the Instagram for movie reviews. We're on there at Confirmed Epic, so check us out on there. You can always email any thoughts, questions, comments, or concerns about the Confirmed Epic podcast or theepicreview.com to thepicreview, theepicreview at gmail.com. All right, goblins and ghouls, from the haunted foothills of North Carolina, we are out.
Andy, no, please. We're friends to the end, remember?
This is the end, friend.
This has been a production of the GWW Radio Network. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. Also, check out Geeks Worldwide at thegww.com for all the latest news, reviews, and opinions on video games, comics, movies, TV, cosplay, and more. Geeks, assemble!